Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome you to our meeting here this evening, the presentation to be given by both Bill Falloon and Ben Best, and Bill will be up in just a moment. I'd also like to announce the lending library that the Church of Perpetual Life now has, and you're all welcome to check out a book that's in the inner sanctuary lobby right here just outside the doors. And there's also a suggestion box there and things. So I'm very happy to have you here this evening, and also want to welcome everyone who's tuned in to us, and we appreciate your patience as we get underway. Unfortunately, the traffic here in Hollywood, Florida was unacceptably high, and so a number of people were unable to make it on time. We are here at 7:15, and hopefully you got the message earlier that we were postponed for 15 minutes. So we welcome you all. I know there may be some people from Russia. We had some contact from I don't write Russian, so whoever the gentleman was that wrote to me in Russian, we're still translating your email, and we will get back to you. So again, without any further ado, welcome to the Church of Perpetual Life, and I'd like to welcome up a great man, Mr. Bill Falloon.
A fundamental purpose of establishing this church is to educate our members and the public about medical travesties that occurred in the past, and about the fact that these epidemic tragedies are still occurring. People are still needlessly suffering and dying. And what we want to do is show analogies in a way that people can understand that we've come so far in such a short period of time. Just imagine how far we'll be 150 years from now. The slide you see on the screen right now, it states, "Happy birthday, Dr. Snow." Came out of the Journal of the American Medical Association about a year ago. Now, Dr. Snow, he's considered the genius who created the science of epidemiology. Before Dr. Snow, there really wasn't a science of epidemiology. People took guesses, but they didn't really measure it mathematically to determine whether or not an event was occurring that was causing people to die. Dr. Snow did that. Go back to London around 1840, 1850. This is Victorian England, the most powerful country possibly that's ever existed. They owned India, good part of Africa, the Middle East, China, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. England was the place to be as far as high technology. And yet they were conducting habits. They were involved in some rather dirty habits that were causing epidemics of cholera to occur. And these epidemics were caused by feces that were not properly being disposed of. These feces were leaking into the underground wells. People would pump these wells and literally drink feces-laden water. That water contained the Vibrio cholera bacteria, which caused more cholera, which caused more contamination of the wells, and people continued to die. Dr. Snow had a difficult time convincing people not to drink feces-laden water. Sounds simple, but he had a hard time convincing people to do it. Now, cholera is an infection that doesn't get into the bloodstream. It only affects the intestines. A patient with cholera will probably defecate about 5 gallons of fluid a day until they die. And that 5 gallons of fluid contains the progeny of the Vibrio cholera bacteria. So by taking care of the waste the way they did in London, which was simply to put it back into the drinking wells, people kept drinking cholera-laden water. And they continued to die at epidemic levels of cholera. And what Dr. Snow did, he identified that. And as you can see by this chart, diarrhea was a major cause of death back in these days. People were dying from something that very few people die of from today. But back in London, one of the most advanced cities in the world, it was laden with cholera, and people were drinking this bacteria, not knowing that it was killing them. So Dr. Snow did some interesting things. He introduced the fact that if people could simply boil their water or obtain their water from safer sources, they wouldn't contract cholera, which was killing the wealthy, killing the poor. It really depended on where your well was. If you had a well in which a lot of cholera-laden feces were being accumulated, well, that would be a sign that you were probably going to develop cholera yourself at some point. And by just closing some of the most dangerous wells, Dr. Snow was able to show that cholera is something that could be controlled. They didn't know how to cure it, by the way. Antibacterial agents, antibiotics weren't developed for about 75 years, but they knew that there was something in the water. And as a result, they were able to eradicate cholera epidemics in London and other big cities. So we look at, how does this relate to cryonics? Well, here we are today with a very small percentage of the people recognizing that if we do die, and when we die at this stage, it's better to cryopreserve our bodies rather than let these bodies decompose. So one of the analogies that we'd like to talk about is that Dr. Snow knew there was something poisonous in the water supply. He knew it. Didn't know what it was, though. The bacterial theory of disease had not yet been accepted. It wasn't really even discovered yet. Pasteur didn't discover it for 20 more years. It wasn't proven until another 25 years by Koch. So here we had a situation where we didn't know what was in the water. We just knew it was bad. Now, we cryonicists, we know that permanent death is bad. And yet the general public doesn't accept it yet. It's our mission to educate the public about these simple facts. But by going back in history and looking at some very obvious techniques that people could use to avoid premature death, we can at least analogize to what cryonics is today. Now, Dr. Snow's work resulted in incredible improvements in overall public health. And a lot of the work that's being done right now in cryopreservation research laboratories, we are developing techniques that are helping people right now that's going to potentially enable us to set up a bank of organs, kidneys that we can store and make available to people who need transplants instead of waiting for somebody to die. But the big analogy that I like to talk about is the fact that it just made no sense for people to ever drink feces-contaminated water. It just didn't make sense to do that. And yet that's what people were doing, and they were dying as a result. And our belief here at this church is it makes no sense for someone who has the opportunity to be cryopreserved to choose cremation or burial or some other form of disposition that will deny them that opportunity to potentially come back to life. So what Dr. Snow demonstrated is that just drinking clean water, simple as that, it can prevent diseases that were causing diarrhea and causing premature death. He was able to save many, many lives. But even today, 1.5 million people every single year are dying of cholera and other diseases that relate to contaminated water. So even if cryogenics technology evolves and cryopreservation is something that's accepted 100 years from now, there'll still be people who won't want to do it, people who will choose something different than what we think is going to work. And that's really okay if they want to make that choice. That is a personal choice. But it's just from a standpoint of analogies. Here we have rock-solid evidence that drinking clean water is a good thing and drinking feces-laden water is bad. Yet 1.5 million people a year still die throughout the world by drinking feces-contaminated water. We go back to 1975. Some people in this room were with me in 1975 when the total number of people signed up to be cryopreserved was between 50 and 60 throughout the entire world. Very few people wanted to do it. Very, very little money was available to do research. Well, that's changed quite a bit. We look at today, we have organizations that have substantial assets, substantial infrastructure. We're able to do remote standbys, able to do vitrifications. We've got relatively safe long-term storage. Major improvements have occurred. And as a result of those improvements, a lot more people have signed up. Membership statistics, you all see this every month in the Cryonics magazine published by Alcor. They've got about 1,000 fully signed up members. The Cryonics Institute has somewhere around 500, I think. I don't really see their numbers published. So you go from 50 people in 1975 to about 1,500 people today. It's a lot of growth. Still nowhere near what it's going to be or what we want it to be, but it's still a lot of growth that's occurred. And there's a lot of research going on, and that's what's really important. At 21st Century Medicine, about 15 to 18 full-time scientists working around the clock to develop perfected ways of vitrifying a brain so that at least we can preserve that structure, so that at some point in the future, we will be able to revive people who are cryopreserved. Critical care research does other types of, of technology that enables us to rapidly cool in the field, reduce the decomposition damage that might occur. Suspended animation, they've been quite busy this month doing 2 cases. They do remote standbys. They also do research on how to better stabilize patients when they go down. And the big project, the time ship, is going to ultimately be the reanimation research facility. That's where scientists will work to figure out how to bring cryopreserved people back to life. That's our ultimate goal, by the way, as far as fundraising. We're hoping to raise about $300 million for the time ship project. There is going to be a conference in May in San Antonio, Texas. About 1,000 acres of land we own outside of San Antonio. That's where the time ship will be housed, and quite a few people are going to come and get a tour of the facility, a tour of the project. We don't have the facility called the time ship done yet, but we do have a lot of infrastructure built up on the property. Church of Perpetual Life has been established to accelerate the Creator's plan for mankind to develop the technologies that will enable perpetual life, that will put us into an environment of perpetual existence. And the prophet, we have Nikolai Fedorov, brilliant individual who foresaw everything that's occurring today. Everything that's going on today, Nikolai Fedorov saw over 100 years ago. And he advocated for the common task of humanity, that we take affirmative action to make this happen. Not just wait for it to happen, to make it happen. And one of these common tasks that Nikolai Fedorov advocated was the bodily resurrection of all humans who have ever lived. A book that was written about Nikolai Fedorov is out there on the internet right now. It can be bought on eBay for a lot of money. But the good news is a new book has been written that memorializes a lot of what Nikolai Fedorov wrote. This was written by Dr. Charles Tandy, been a long-term Cryonics member. That is available on Amazon at a very reasonable price. So people who want to look more into the concept of the Creator's plan and what physical immortality really is going to be like, it's an interesting book that people may want to get. At some point, the church will have it available here. So I want to just conclude my presentation about what cryopreservation really represents. It is really control over one's destiny. It provides the ultimate peace of mind that at some point in the future, death will be optional. Perpetual life will be what people expect. So I'm going to thank people for attending tonight, and Ben is going to put on a very interesting lecture.